Mic check. Hey, I'm Steve, and this is the Deployed from Detroit School of Leadership and Madness. It's just going to be me today, and I'm going to try and be quick. Sometimes I know we can go for a while. Um, so talking about defeating evil, I have notes, so it's probably a smart idea to pay attention to those notes, huh? Put all the effort in, didn't I? Ba 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 ba. Um, Goodness gracious. I'm sorry for the start of this, guys. Well, let me catch you up while I'm getting back on track here with my documents. So, where we've been gone. Uh, that one's odd to explain because we've always had a policy that if someone is saying it better, then we won't say it at all. And that's been kind of the crux of what guides us into picking topics is finding, if somebody's not talking about it at all, or if somebody's talking about it poorly, or what have you. And so, leading up to all this, we've had a number of episodes where we talk very specifically about mass violence, police violence, shootings, racism, hate, the whole nine yards. We've broken it down scientifically, mathematically, mechanically, you name it. We've covered it. And then, luckily, we didn't have to talk about it anymore. And so, it's not like that was the only thing we had to talk about. But also in that time span, priorities change a bit. And as much as I wanted to make this show our big priority, that's, it's, this thing is very useful and very helpful, and we want to continue working it. But our current side project, which has kind of become our main project for the time being, is taking quite a bit of effort because it's new and unique, and oddly enough, it bothers some people. But ultimately, it's a good thing. Like, if I want to be coy, I'll say it's an interesting new type of community center. Yeah. And so we're working on that. And ultimately, the goal for that, though, is understanding that the economy is in shit heels and we're in trouble. And so there's going to be a lot of overturn in the economy, and there's going to be a lot of people who need either they're going to get hooked on something, and so they just need a place to dry out. So they lost a skill, they need to gain a skill. The position disappeared, and these things are going to continue as we go too. With automation, there's so many jobs we have now that just aren't going to be viable. There's no reason to have the examples are a bit lengthy, so I just won't go into it. But like, we just need to consider the fact that this has always been a need. Like, this isn't new, that the need has been present. And I don't like it's a lot of that because we're trying to articulate some old ideas, because as much as we're a community center, it's also a bit of a monastery, except we're not like monks. We're not enforcing any kind of rules like that, but it goes to the point of what we're trying to talk about here, this whole defeating evil, because you don't defeat evil by like going out and fighting dragons. That's how you get killed. What you do is you build good, not build well. You want to build well when you're out there, but build good things. Build things that are counter. It's in a sense about balance, but it's not so much. It's more so about drowning out the other thing. If let's look at Facebook. Facebook is a shit show. And a lot of people, like, one of our problems with marketing is that we don't use Facebook. I don't use Facebook, which means we basically don't use Facebook. And it's not policy or nothing. It's just I run marketing, and, well, there you go. But Facebook it's a nightmare. For me, it's a hellscape. It's already tricky enough for me to sort of like read everything on the screens, and then but all the stuff that's presented to you to read is usually just nonsense. So, like, there's no, every 12th picture is like, oh, hey, we were on vacation. And then the rest of it's just vitriol and nonsense. But it makes sense because it's people using a children's toy to the most effect it can have. And so that's part of our concern with Facebook and that kind of shit. And like, how do we defeat that? And essentially going to the point of this is a lot of it involves going around. And you start to realize that a lot of these powers, a lot of these evil things that we want to defeat are ultimately very weak. They have very thin skins. They have very particular weaknesses. There's always a way to defeat these, but in most cases it involves just deflating the thing, cutting it off, making it irrelevant. If you made charity sexy, then people would be throwing all their money away. Like, it's all a matter of how you sell a thing and how a thing is sold to you. But, alright, so to my notes, I found them. That'll help here, because for our previous viewers, you know how my brain gets. For any new viewers, hang on for the ride. Alright, so how to destroy evil. So, I always like to quote Henry Ford and then point out that he was an anti-Semite and he had his own employees killed because he thought they were part of a communist conspiracy. But he also innovated business in a few ways. And this, like, he's an interesting person, whoever the fuck he was. He was interesting. But he also made a very good point. And I'll go ahead and butcher it. But essentially, keep doing what you do and you get what you got. Like, if we continue to repeat our behaviors from the past, we'll continue to get the results from the past. And it's ridiculous to think otherwise. Oh, maybe it'll be different this time. Maybe if we do communism, it'll turn out cool. No, it just turns out that thing sucks. So try something else. Be creative. Be bold, be something else. But, like, no, we've done it. Don't repeat these things just because, like, there's some comfort in the idea that, like, oh, there's books about it though, and we can quote things on it and we can say stuff, and like, it's all still just horseshit. It's nonsense. And so let's consider my favorite author and my grandpa's favorite author, and ironically, like, not for the same reason and then for the same reason, but I don't know. So in the book Sirens of Titan, which if you haven't read, you're a criminal, JK, but go ahead and read that thing, because it's difficult to explain the book, the impact that book had on me. It was that book, oddly enough, which is about yay thick and, you know, it's a pulp fiction type sci-fi book, but it had more sort of ethical and spiritual impact on me than pretty much any other religious text I've ever read. It's a wild book, but to the point. He says, there's no reason why good cannot triumph as often as evil. The triumph of anything is a matter of organization. If there are such things as angels, I hope they are organized along the lines of the mafia. Kurt Vonnegut. So he's not saying the angels should go out and kill people, but he's saying, like, hopefully, if the mafia's got, it's organized and has levels and knows what it's doing and has teams and districts and whatever the hell they do, hopefully the good guys do the same thing, right? But a lot of times we don't. And especially now, we're very not just divided, but isolated. You not just feel alone, you are alone in a lot of cases. And so it's difficult to figure out, how do we participate? How do we affect change from inside a bubble? And the answer is, it's going to be something new. The answer is, I don't have the answer because we haven't found it yet. But to that, it also means maybe we don't need to be repeating a lot of the crap we did in the past. The idea of persecuting people and if you're wasting your time on witch hunts, it's because you enjoy hunting witches. It has nothing to do with any kind of altruism. It's because it's the one place you can be a predator. And that's a true statement, whether or not you like it. If you're tracking down this person or that person, or I go on Facebook and find these people and shit in their face, and I go on Instagram and I find these people, or whatever the fuck, that's no different than the fellow and the other person doing the same thing. There is no gain to the organization. There's no gain to the mission. You're wasting time and effort. And so what do you need to do with your time and effort? That's sort of the next question. And it makes sense, if you're being attacked, it makes sense to fight back. That makes sense. If you perceive that you're being attacked, then you might want to fight back. If you think that, I'm fighting a dragon, I better get bigger armor and bigger weapons or something. But no, the truth to killing a dragon was you put an arrow in the spot where the scale's missing, and boop, gone. Or in one case in a D&D game, I just made him go to sleep, and then the other guy cut his head off while he was sleeping, and dragon dead. You don't fight the dragon like a dragon. That's a dipshit move. So, we need to be smart, agile, but most of all creative in whatever these solutions are that defeat evil. So I want to talk a little bit more about censorship, because I know it's difficult, because you can see people saying shit and you want to stop them. But that doesn't help. And those words floating out in the universe, they're only harmful if you take them in. If you bring them in and let them hurt you, they will hurt you. But if you just look at it and go, what's this guy's fucking problem? And move on, it changes. It's a whole different approach. Your day is done. Then it's easy to get caught in the trap of like, oh, this is a subject dear to my heart and I'm an expert in this field and blah, 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 blah. Or you're just like, fuck you, motherfucker. I'm going to fucking weave hole. Or at least seen it, if not been there. Yeah, because it's easy, because it's right there. And it makes sense, too, because, like, they're coming at me through the front door. Why not come at them through the front door? But no, go around back, sneak around. There needs to be some kind of wisdom in your approach. And so as much as you want to, meet their aggression with aggression, you need to meet them like, nonviolence is interesting, but it's a bit passive. And the more dangerous version of it is the kind where it becomes like actively like when you just start hugging everybody. Like, it's a weird, the examples of it are so limited through history, because people are like, oh, I'll get shot. Like, maybe not. Maybe they shoot 3, 4, 5 of you guys or gals or whomever. I'm sorry. But like, whoever the fuck they end up shooting, there's still enough of you behind them that, like, I don't know. I have no idea. Again, like I said, I don't know, but it's about creativity at this point. And then, like, if we consider Epictetus, and if you go back to we have a few episodes where we've talked about him, and in Epictetus, his book, The Enchiridion, sometimes called the Manual, and a couple other translations for it. But he has this interesting bit about, if someone comes at you, it's almost like each of these situations is a jug with two handles. And one handle's broken, and one handle's fine. And so they're coming at you with the broken handle. It's up to you to turn it around. And it's not that this person, I'm totally butchering the whole thing, but it's the idea that, like, consider the opposite action. Opposite action is something you'll hear if you're in therapy. And opposite action is a very quick two-word boiling down of this idea. You know, a lot of times, and it's so an interesting immediate example of that is if you're super depressed or something, if you force a smile, it'll begin to make you feel better. It feels dumb as hell for most of the time. But it's also an innate thing you do. There's people who laugh at weird times. And it's because it's that or cry. And their body just has a trigger, so they start laughing at a funeral. Because we're not doing the saddest shit, yo. Clicking the laughs. Boom. Ha ha ha. It uses the same juice, hits the same buttons, does the same tricks. But it's less of a bummer. People are odd creatures. But anyway, okay. So let's get back to this nonsense. What was I talking about? Something to consider too with these people. You know, any groups of people associated with these evils that you're interested in are at their heart just individuals. They're participating in a group structure, in a group activity, in a blah, blah, blah. But they are not a slice of bread. They're not a portion of a thing. They're still that little thing. And in all cases, I mean, there's probably going to be some statistical anomalies or whatever, or like maybe some kind of mental health block on the bridge. But I'd say in most cases, everybody's doing something because it makes them feel safe, it makes them feel loved, it makes them feel validated. It makes them feel valuable. And what is that word I'm kind of reaching for? Well, who cares? It makes them feel like they have some kind of like worth to a community and to the world at large, and that they can make change in the world. Those are the reasons they're doing it. And it's insane to think that on the way to that they ended up there. But the world's a crazy fucking place. And there's a lot of ways to get tripped up. And there's a lot of reasons to just stay down when you get knocked down. And so there's a lot of bodies on the path and a lot of people who, you know, misery loves company. And before you know it, you have these cliques and these groups. And, oh, the answer to your suffering is because of the Jews or the Gypsies or the blacks or the gays or the... It's not your fault that you feel bad, or it's not your dad's fault. You know, it's not his fault for touching you or nothing. That's just... It's his right. You're his property. You're, you know, like... Just people are told crazy shit constantly. And so it's not hard to see how like if you take a step back and look, why does someone think this way? You have some enemy, or you have some whatever the hell you have that makes you so fucking angry that you need to act. Look at them and figure out the road to their suffering. And figure out, because I posed this question to some Buddhists I hang out with, and we were talking about something sort of along these lines. But I posed it this way, where I said that when asking these questions of someone, you should be kind of asking, how did their Buddha nature bring them to this? And Buddha nature means a lot of shit, but it means at its heart, like, the enlightened part of you, the wise part of you. And so, like, how did the wise part of you... Like, let's think about Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes was an opium addict. Smartest man in London. And an opium addict. It's not hard for even the wisest, smartest, most pious people to end up in places where the number of decisions are limited. It's not just a matter of like, oh, I can do this, that, or the other. There's times where read up on prisoners of war and the kind of just, you're like, maybe I'll kill myself today. That might be better than what they're having us do. I don't, let's not progress into that because it's out there and we know it and we're already addressing it. So we need to look past it, and that's the hard part. Is what does a world look like without this thing? And that starts to frame a new set of goals and a new set of answers. So it's not a matter of destroying this thing that you think is evil or whatever, but what does the world look like when it has been destroyed? And that starts establishing some new things. So if I'm looking at what does in this society, what does it really look like for No Troop Left Behind? For the Wounded Warrior, like for us to have every veteran, regardless of I don't care. If you did your time, you did your time, let's talk. Can we get every last one squared away from the cradle to the grave again? Is that something, or I don't even think we've ever done that before, but is that a thing we can do? What does it look like when we've accomplished that? What does that look like with the resources we have now? Are we going to have to invent some new resources? That's part of the discussion we're doing on our business side, which is why we've been disappeared for such a minute, is because we're trying to figure out just along those same kind of lines, like how the hell does that work? But that's going to be the answer. That's going to be the successful thing. Because the other part of that is in addressing that, you start to see, look into that future where that thing doesn't exist. And so if somebody's not doing that, what else are they doing? So if somebody's not doing the thing you don't like, what else? So there, in some cases, it's obvious. There's people out there and you're like, hey, put your goddamn mask on, dude. It's not that difficult. There's zero difficulty. Just put it on. Cool. And then, so the obvious answer to that is everyone has their mask on. But that's not what's really going on. These people who aren't wearing masks they either don't believe that there's a thing going on, they don't think there's a threat. Some of them think it somehow questions their masculinity, which means they're just questioning their own masculinity and they don't want to fucking deal with it right now. There's a lot of that shit going on out there. But there's, the way isn't to be hey, you fucking idiot, put your goddamn mask on. Because you're already the enemy. You already suck. You can't go up and hug the person because, come on, pandemic. But say, hey, could you do me a favor just for an hour? For me, for my own, please? See what that gets you. See how much further that gets you. It may not even get you all the way, but it begins cutting the path. You have to remember that these people are fucking people. Whoever your decided enemy is, whatever evil you must destroy, you need to remember that these people are people. For better or for worse. That means there are some interesting, predictable components to their behavior, and there are some very interesting, unpredictable components to their behavior. But it's all out there. But ultimately, they're the same as you. You're yelling at yourself, which is why it's so infuriating. That's why you have such... Why do you feel like you have a personal stake in this when you're yelling at somebody at the grocery store? Because you're yelling at yourself. You're yelling at yourself for being stupid. But it's not working, is it? No. Because now they have fan clubs and they have parties and there's all kinds of shit going on. People are specifically acting against their own best interest as a sort of sign of bravado. It's not the same as seppuku, but it comes from the same dumb pool of ways to kill yourself to prove that you're a badass. But those are only the reaches of desperate people who have no other sense of greatness in their life. And so they'll go out like a cowboy. But they won't go out like a cowboy. They'll go out wheezing, blue-lipped, and fucking dead alone. No one seeing them. No one seeing them die. No one seeing them covered. No one seeing them buried. They're just going to not be there one day. There's nothing badass about that shit. So when you're trying to attack them, don't attack them. That's not how you defeat evil. You don't fight fire with fire. I mean, there's some technicalities, but let's be serious about this in some regard with the metaphor. To fight fire with fire is to spread fucking fire. And so there needs to be another method. Now, in some cases, you can move the fire. You can utilize the fire. You can start a containment fire. There's all kinds of, let's, not stretch it out too far. But there are ways, because ultimately, if these people are passionate about this, there's nothing to say they can't be passionate about something else. Look at somebody who was an alcoholic and then went to AA, and now they're a born-again Christian. And now you're like, all right, what, like, I'm not going to go further into that line, because God bless them for getting where they are. However, that's a semi-predictable path, because it's all about controlling one's universe. I control my experience through alcohol. That didn't work. I control my life through AA. That did all right. Now I control my life through this strict set of rules these neat guys in the polo shirts gave me. Good to go. Cradle to grave, baby. But that's still the same passion of, I need to control my life. These aren't separate events. This alcoholism and this AA and this born-again Christianity, these aren't separate traumas, separate instances, no. It's all trying to scratch the same itch of, in this very specific set of instances, something needs to be put in a bottle. And a lot of people do that with booze. And as wild and crazy as you can get, you can also keep a lot of demons in with the booze. And that's what it's there for. Let's follow this thread, because an interesting thing that comes up is, having come from the addiction side of things, with just pills and shit. I say heroin a lot, mostly to be like, it's really just to be dramatic. I never purchased, may I have one heroin, please? Never did any of that shit. But I did opiates, of all varieties in pill form. And it turns out heroin's actually pussy shit compared to what I was slinging. So I say heroin just because it's funny. But it's not funny. But it's, anyway. So the environment I come from is like the pill popper types. As soon as one of them gets clean, they become fucking evangelical street preachers about however the hell they pulled it off. So I went to this detox, and it's because in a lot of cases, you're suffocating while you're in these addictive states, and it's like breathing for the first fucking time. And so, like, you see your peers just inches away from air and struggling, and you're just desperate to kind of pull them out. But that's not how you got out. You didn't get out when somebody came clamoring to you about how great, you're forgetting the path you're on while you're proclaiming it, how great it is. Like, you forgot the fact that, like, in most cases, you either have an overdose, see an overdose, or do something that causes, like, relatives, neighbors, or law enforcement to become upset with you. And then you're like, oh. Like, it literally takes a rock bottom, and it's because of where it sits in your brain. Like, certain other alarms need to be triggered in order for you to be like, oh, this is legit bad. Like, we can get into it at another time. But it's still that same passion and drive of like, like you see them for my own experience. The ones who don't address the reason why they do the drugs just find other drugs to do. And it may not even just be drugs. It may be other behaviors. Oh, I just work out now. I run marathons now. I run marathons every single day now. You're like, that's likely not healthy. Like, I'm sure you've got to be healthy to do that, I suppose. But I don't know that the behavior itself is healthy. Just abusing your body like a workhorse. And people can they can get addicted to sex. They can get addicted to video games. They can get addicted to just about anything. Like, all it takes is for the dumb part of your brain that measures, like, was this good enough for, like, how do I explain it? Dopamine's very interesting because it's about motivation more than reward. A lot of people thought it was like a reward chemical, but it's actually more towards, it pushes you towards a thing rather than, God, I have to read on it again before I start getting into it. But anyway, so we're talking about passion. Yeah. So you can transfer the passions to these people. So it's difficult to say, how do I take a bunch of KKK people and transfer their passion? Well, that's going to be hard. But you can't right away go, Clyde, fuck you. You're you are worse than worse. You're not even a human being anymore. You don't even count as a person. We don't care for you. Get out of here. All that's going to do to Clyde is like, oh, now I'm out of the group. Oh, shit, I'm on my own. Fuck you guys. And it just entrenches them further because you've eliminated something that was actually holding them sort of firmly to the community. If you kick these people out of the community, you're one step further from solving this problem. So you need to figure out how to re-engage them into the community, into this process. But you need to just find those natural paths. Like, okay, let's listen to the dumb shit the KKK says and figure out how we can turn it into something valuable. So I'm not going to recite their nonsense, but I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it so that, like, they don't get a whole bunch of Google hits today. But they have this little creed of theirs, and it talks pretty heavily about taking care of women and children, specifically white ones. But it's a start. So what if you turn the KKK, instead of a cross-burning, human-hurting, whatever the fuck they think they are, organization, into, like, a home for battered white ladies? And it's not great. It's not great. But it's a start. And it's natural. And then eventually you just go, hey fellas, can we just get rid of the whole segregation thing? And like 20 years in, no problem. Maybe even 10. Who knows? Generations are changing so quickly these days. It used to be like a 20-year gap of like, this is what we wear now. And now I have no idea. I've been away from the internet for like 3-4 months, and it's like I've been on the moon or something. I have no idea what's happening in the world. But you can move these people and shift these people. Think about what's truly motivating. Think about that. The KKK, one of their little things is about protecting white women and children, which means someone has told them white women and children are at risk from, well, you can guess who. Anybody who's not white, I guess, but particularly blacks. And then a lot of times they throw Jews in there too. And then sometimes they'll also throw in Greeks and Turks and Middle Easterners. And I mean, like, just anybody who's not white, but also not, like, ghost white sometimes. It really depends. Some racist cliques are a little bit more racist than others. It's odd to see that some racist groups are then, by definition, more inclusive than others. Huh. So, anyway. Yeah, you're not going to destroy these things. They're going to destroy themselves. The reason the Confederacy lost is because their ideas were stupid. And after a while, you just can't keep funding dumb shit like that. And so it died on the vine. And that's where most of these other things should die and likely will die. Even in spite of our effort of shining light on it, saying, oh, this terrible goddamn thing, this is. But we can cause it to die in the vine a little bit quicker if we start cutting it off, Well, I mean, you could just cut the thing off. There is that, but it's a bit dramatic. How does one play this? You almost want to starve it, is the better way. Starve it off the vine. Let the nutrients go to the better parts. And and the nutrients in this case are the people. And so, an odd example of this, because on one hand it's sort of devastating to the economy, but on the other hand it's the birth of another portion. Like, Amazon didn't spend any money eradicating entire genres of business, like bookstores and even hardware stores take a hit, and grocery stores, like a lot of places take a hit from Amazon. And it's not that Amazon is a bad thing. It's not that these companies are bad. The position we're in is just that the one is markedly better for a lot of different stuff, and so we just end up using it more. And so he didn't even at no point did Amazon have to destroy their competition. They didn't. Their competition just died as they grew. And then they got a chance to pick up the scraps afterwards. So it's not a matter of, if we wanted to get that amount of fundamental change in the marketplace, if he started with the mission of destroying businesses, then he'd been squashed immediately. It would never have gone anywhere. But he didn't have to do that. And it's not even a reasonable sort of goal. But let's say we want to destroy some shit. If we go on the warpath, that's pretty obvious to people. And people are prepared for the warpath. But people aren't prepared for new. Because how the fuck can you be? And so, that's the thing. That's the move. So it's not a matter of we should protest in a different spot then. No. The protests are doing what they're doing, and they're fine for what they're fine for. But it's not a blanket response. It's not the amount of time and effort that goes into just standing there yelling at a building of people who aren't listening to you versus take that same effort, those same bodies, that same money, and create another building that does all the shit you want to see done. So if you don't see it being done over here, you make a building over here that does those things. That's what we're doing with our business. And that's how you defeat evil. If the one place over here only sells evil, and then all of a sudden you start selling good, yeah, that's an obvious fucking choice. I'm buying good. What? Unless I'm some kind of, deranged what have you. But for the most part, most people want to be good. And they just find it difficult. They're put in these positions where they're told to be afraid of one another. They're told that this person's out to get you. They're told that giving is the same as taking away from yourself. That somehow if I give you $5, oh no, now I don't have $5. No, but now this person does. That's better. What the fuck was I going to do? I have another $5. I can still get a sandwich. There's no... What's the problem here? But we're... I don't know what these angles are we give ourselves. I know where they come from, and I shouldn't say I don't, but it's... The articulation is the difficult part. That's always the... I should pull up the Lotus Sutra. I always like to. But there's a moment where Buddha's in the middle of explaining, and he's like, I can't. You know what? It's not worth it. It's too weird. You wouldn't get it until you, get it, That's a complete paraphrase, of course. But that's the gist of, one of the most famous paragraphs of the Lotus Sutra. is him going like, you're not going to get it until you get it. So you got to, but then there's this understanding of like, you just need to bring them into a place where they can just kind of get it on their own. And that's something we can do. That these are all, so if you're trying to, you don't defeat racism by attacking racists. I wish it were that easy. You pop it and, oh, okay, they're gone. Woo! No. Racism, the thing in these people's heads, is a set of ideas, which means this involves education. So you got to teach people. You got to be careful how you teach them. You got to be careful what you teach them, because kids are very susceptible to, being told a thing. And so if you tell somebody that they're a shitty person, they'll believe you. They'll believe you for the rest of their life. At least this guy does. And that's a hard thing to overcome. Extremely hard. And so we need to be careful. Like, there was a situation where these kids were interacting, and it was their first time for these white kids even seeing black people. Like, I didn't know that was still a thing, but apparently it was still a thing. And so they're saying a whole mess of racist shit. And they kind of got me in a room, and they're like, all right, you need to fix this. You need to, like, straighten these kids out. And I was like, no, you don't. You don't fix it by calling them racist. And so what I did is, rather than yell at these two, I yelled at the whole room. And I didn't yell at the whole room. I talked to like a couple hundred kids. What? It's probably like 150, more likely. But I was real clear with him that, like, I know there aren't any racists in this room, but there are for sure people who have said some racist things, or have been taught some racist things, or have been told it's funny, or it's a joke, or this, that. Like, I won't go through the whole thing because it's long. But I took it from the other angle. Rather than saying, all right, you little fuckers, you need to get along. Hug! Be friends! Like, what? It's like, I can't remember which comedian does it, but there's a bit about yelling at someone to relax. Like, there's no, I think Patton Oswalt. Like, there's no way you can't, relax! How does that, all right. Nah, that's never, ever. And if someone does do that, take them to the hospital. Because there's a problem. Train of thought. Tracks. Missing. Interesting. Notes. So we've already talked about hate and all that kind of shit before. And if that's the big thing you're trying to counter, and that seems to be a big sort of subject out there, people assuming there's hatred. But you need to understand where hate comes from. Hate comes out of the same bucket as love. If that kind of starts to make sense. Because why would you hate someone unless they were a threat to someone you loved? Even if you're a narcissist and you love yourself. There's still, otherwise there's no reason. There's no value to it. There's no mechanical. And so, in order to push these things out, you have to present these sort of threats. Like, truth be told, when I was in 5th grade, and I want to be clear that I'm pretty sure, just knowing how law enforcement works, that this was not the opinion of the Waterford Police Department at the time. But the DARE officer I had came in, and he started saying that, like, black, or his point was that white kids shouldn't be hanging out in black neighborhoods. And he said that the only reason white people will go to black neighborhoods is to buy drugs. And I was really confused as to why it also couldn't be to, like, visit your friend. But that was part of the education. And not a lot of people are that questioning. A lot of people just take information and go, okay, cool. And so a lot of people took that at face value. It was like, all right, I guess I gotta stay out of there. Huh, it must be dangerous. All right. Like, and they just fucking boop. And then it's a problem, obviously. But it's an education problem. A lot of people are taught wrong. They're seeing things that can enforce these dumb ideas. So it's a matter of like, all right, if they have a school that teaches this shit, you need to build another school that teaches the other thing. And so it's not you don't build a school where you yell at racists. You build a school that just lets everybody be whoever they need to be. Maybe. I don't know. Like I said. But it's going to be something else. You can't just burn down the fucking Reichstag because they're going to move it to the bar. Like, you don't change anything with this sort of like crazy behavior on this more dramatic end, because all they have to do is like, oh, I guess we're Skyping the Illuminati meetings. They burned down our headquarters, but we'll just Zoom this shit now. Like, this destruction of anything isn't going to do anything. And so building is the answer. Building has to be the answer. And so you need to build a thing that will do the opposite of what you think the other building is doing. And really start to think of it in those terms and in those ways, because so much of your reality is vocabulary. And I'm not saying go out get one of those like word of the day calendars, although those are kind of interesting. But expanding your vocabulary does a number of things for you. Because you can say my arm hurts. And that could mean anything from I have to cut it off to I don't have to do anything. To saying, I have a shooting pain in my arm. Oh, you're having a heart attack. Your arm is fine. Let's move on to the more pressing thing. Like, the more descriptive you can get, it changes the world you're into. And it also changes the access of things, or the number of things you have access to, I guess is how the words fall in order there. But how you frame the world, how you talk about yourself, how you talk about the world. I hate the world. These people fucking suck. Okay. What's that getting you? What'd that get you yesterday? Well, it's probably going to keep getting you that today. Alright. But if you move on to just remember that you're yelling at yourself a lot of times. And so what is it that how did you get to where you are? Oh, some tail end of something I said before, but the path you were on. Oh, about the addicts, like you're not letting these people hit rock bottom. Or in some cases, people are at rock bottom. So what's next after that? Like a huge thing with the whole welfare safety net is that there's no ground under it. And so you're just stuck in this big fucking hammock with everyone else. And you're like, well, at least I'm not dead. And that is life on welfare for a lot of people. Because if it's there, there's no lights on it. And that's enough for people to be like, I ain't fucking with that. And they're going to stay in the net. And so that's one of the things we're trying to consider on our end is, can we build a floor? Can we build a ladder? What do we need to build to start getting people out of there? Like, okay, we got you, and cool, off you go. Because most people want that. The reason people stay on assistance is because it's more secure than the crazy job market out there, where for some reason small business owners think that they're pimps and they treat their employees like dog shit. They try to squeeze every last second of time out of these people for whatever measly dollar they can throw at them. And the excuses are all horseshit. Oh, it's insurance and this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 blah. But every economic model shows that if you have a staff that is better compensated, you end up making way more money. But there's just this fucking, I watch Sopranos a lot, and I think this is what tough guys look like, so here we go. Like, just ill-educated fuckwads out there, ruining the world just because they accidentally bumped into the biggest piles of money. Like, so we're not going to get these people with targeted attacks and this kind of blah, blah, blah. No. You need to build a place that draws them out. You need to build a place or a thing or something or what have you. Something that is the of course, the obvious, the why didn't I think of that? Because we haven't yet, you know? So it's going to be like the minute you think of it, there's going to be a room full of people going, oh, yeah, we're doing that. And it'll be one of those ideas, but obviously we haven't hit it yet because we're still singing the same old song and dance, and it sucks. All right, so if you legitimately want to destroy evil, let's think about it this way. One, organize. Organize yourself, organize your thoughts, organize your people, organize your team, organize whatever the fuck you got to organize, but get all your ducks in a row. Don't just have a passing fancy for something. Turn it into the goddamn Manhattan Project. Get balls to the wall, to the mattresses, pick a metaphor and a saying, go for it. Put a bumper sticker on it, push this bitch out the door, but get it moving, but get it organized. Because if you're going to have this thing on the road, it needs to be road ready. This thing needs to be durable, whatever you're doing. It needs to have lasting power. Because maybe somebody's going to come try and squash you. Because remember, that's the bad guy shit. We're trying to fix bad guys, so we're not going to get into squashing. But don't expect these people not to do squashing. They're shitheads, remember? So they're going to come for you. So this plan needs to stand up to that. It needs to stand up not just to the scrutiny of an honest marketplace, but to the scrutiny of a fucking lying marketplace. You need to have every duck in a row, make sure you know which one's a goose, and get that shit moving. Next bit of that is the building of the good things. Organize what you're doing, but organize yourself towards the construction of something good, or the construction of a fountain of good things. Something that will spring forth good shit from it. Even if it's, hey man, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, I just want to run an ice cream shop. Alright, pay your people like a baller. Make sure that working at that ice cream shop is insane. Expect a lot out of them, and you'll get a lot out of these people. But pay them like they're working at fucking Google, and you'll have people slinging ice cream for you for 20 years. It's a matter of do right things and put things out there, Not only, you pay your people right, they're going to interact with your customers much more enthusiastically, and they're going to be honest with it. People can tell when you're full of shit, and they're like, hi, welcome to so-and-so. Yeah, you don't like this place, do you? No, they're kind of shitty about Wednesdays. And whatever the story is, the story is. But if your place is an awesome place to be, that means it's an awesome place to be. And if you're a business, that's great. You're bringing in customers. If you're a public service, that's great. You're bringing in those customers. Whatever the hell you're trying to do, it's a matter of, all right, let me get my own thoughts aligned here. Holy moly. I am crazy, folks, as it says in one of these corners. Boo! Anyway, should I say anyway some more? Anyway. Like Vonnegut says, we should organize. Get organized. Know where you're headed. Build something good, something that will last, something that, even if it doesn't last, know that that's something to consider too. Most businesses fail, so have a plan for the failure of the business. This is how I succeeded in failing the business. When the business hit the point of we didn't have any customers, I was able to put all the resources into a bucket and pour them into a different bucket. And then I started a different business. And that's how that's how you can successfully fail in a lot of cases. If you know the storm is coming, fucking buy shutters. But there's also the unique, crazy position we're in, where the amount of creativity that's required, I'll tell you, Saul Bass makes a great point. Saul Bass is one of my heroes, and I'm going to steal this quote from him because it's fucking brilliant. And he says, good artists something, great artists steal. Oh, good artist copy, great artist steal. That's what it is. And it's not just that, a good artist copy. What does that mean? So I can draw Garfield too. You're like, oh, neat. Someone who can steal makes Garfield their own. And now who gives a shit about this Davis fella? No, this guy does Garfield. Bill Murray. Duh. It's Garfield. Or whoever, but like, what a weird example I picked. I'll have to do an episode on. Well, I'm going to try and get a social worker for it to talk about dissociation. Because it is wild. It's like time travel, but time travel's not real, so I don't know what it's like. So, don't just be passionate about a thing to the point where I'm a vocal advocate of this. Who gives a fuck? That does nothing. Don't just be a vocal advocate of. I go on Twitter 9 times a day and I talk about how important dogs are. Who gives a shit? Go build a dog shelter. Well, I can't. Go help somebody build a dog shelter. Well, I donate some money to help some people build a dog shelter. Oh. Yeah. You can do things. You can do real things. And those real things cause real change. And it's very important for us to remember that as real as it seems, the internet's not a real place. It doesn't do the same things for us. We don't feel the same through it. We can only be so inspirational. We can only be so discouraging. It's mechanically easier for me to upset you than make you happy through this medium. Just through like simple sort of like chemistry shit. And I'm not going to get into that because you see I'm dipping out. But yeah, let's wrap this puppy up. I've been hollering here for an hour and that's way too much time. But the point is this. You're not going to destroy evil by destroying evil. You're not going to destroy it by even attacking it. It's not going to make a fucking difference. Because all you're going to do is prove the point that evil's trying to make when you attack it. Oh, see, these protesters are violent. Yeah, and I've seen it where it's, I don't know if it's a 50-50. I think it might lean a little more in one direction than the other. As far as like who's poking who first. But I think in a lot of cases, you have... I'm getting lost in like the bullshit of the... What is it? The in my head, it's like I'm just trying to talk, but then there's the voice in my head on top of that like has censor buttons and it's like, well, what if you get... But like, who the fuck am I getting in trouble with? We're not making money off of this thing. It's not the point. Let me slow my brain down and get back on task. Because I'm trying to wrap this bad boy up. Okay, so you want to build good things. You want to build a garden where things can grow. If you build it, they will come. This, that, and the other. You've heard all this before. You know all this before. And so I think also what's a big component of this is that in your creative mind, which you just sort of haven't maybe used to your fullest yet, or maybe you have, because I'm guessing you kind of have, because I think you have an idea on your back burner where you're like, it would be cool if instead of a dining room for my restaurant, what if I did individual seating rooms and then families can just sit together that way? And like, if they're going home together, they can just sit together anyway, and like, who gives a shit, right? We vent that. It's a little bit like those, I think I've seen it on some Japanese travel channel. Now your restaurant's open during the pandemic while everybody else is fucked. You can seat families. Now, you also have private rooms where you can also rent them out for birthdays and board games and whatever. Like, you got to change, but when you change, you'll thrive. Because all that's happening is you're drinking out of an empty well. And so you need to start finding these new sources of water. And that might be insulting. It might feel insulting. I might say, oh, it's just that easy, huh, dipshit? You fucking bald, fucking mustache, whatever the hell you look like, kind of. who the fuck are you? Yeah, who the fuck am I? But, indeed, who the fuck are you? I'd like to know. I'd like to see. I'd like to hear your name in the newspaper when you come up with something so goddamn amazing we all can't turn it down. Like, that's what I'd like to know. Who the fuck are you? Can you change the world? My money's on it. If you put the effort in, yeah, fuck yeah, of course you can. Don't be stupid. You would be stupid to think so otherwise. But don't think it's not going to be hard. Don't think it's going to not be a cause for you to be more creative and agile and unlike yourself, but still like yourself. It's going to be weird. But that's what it's always like. It's never not been this. It's just a matter of engaging it. So yes, there are things out there that suck. But burning them down does nothing, because often that's how a lot of trees spread. In the ashes comes the phoenix, from the fire comes the jack pine. There's all kinds of examples, blah, 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 blah. But just empty that well, or make it unappealing. Have a better option. If you present people with better options, they will select the better options, unless they feel afraid or something or this, that, and the other. And if you think that's a big issue, then work on the people who are afraid of shit, so that they can go take care of the other options the other people are trying to do. What can you do? We're working on it. We got our own little Manhattan project going on, and it's interesting, and it's fun, and it's taxing. It's tiring at times. But it is ultimately worth it, because the thing we're trying to plan needs to exist. Just like the thing you're trying to plan needs to exist. So don't worry about permission, don't worry about trouble, because you have all the permission in the world. You were born a human being, and that means you're free. If anyone tells you otherwise, they're a fucking asshole and a liar. So you are free to do whatever the hell you want to do. There may be a consequence, but still, do it. Do the thing you want to do. We're in that time. You know, we need farmers, and we need plumbers, and we need technicians and tacticians, and yes, we need a lot of the old jobs filled. But more so right now, we need new jobs created. And that doesn't mean more jobs created. That means new jobs created. Something we've never seen before. Something that requires training, education, mentorship. Something that requires infrastructure, industry. Something that requires a community to actually get done. That's how you make big, large, impactful change. Is at these itty-bitty levels. So, fucking get after it, yo. Hopefully you see this video. I know YouTube has gotten much tighter on its policies about this, that, and the other thing. So, maybe we're hidden, maybe we're not. I don't think it's a matter of hidden as much as we don't do any marketing. So, in that case, please market for us. I fucking beg you. 2 pieces. Market for us, somebody. Just shout out for us, let people know what we're up to. I don't know, because we're not doing a great job of ourselves. So far, we're still just a team of 3. We've got like, team of 4 now for, maybe like a 6-man kind of crew going on. There might be about a dozen of us lying around, but not many of us are good at, this, that, and the other thing. And all of us are desperately mentally ill. So that's fun. So yeah, shout out. Let people know what you're up to, what we're up to, why you're up to, who the fuck, how does that work for marketing? I'm crazy. You're crazy. All right. But anyway, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or if you think you'd like to hang out and talk with some crazy motherfuckers like us, and help us get back on schedule, that'd be great. I don't know when we're going to be up next. I don't know any of that nonsense. This was sort of just off the fly today. I was sitting here thinking an idea up, and it kind of, man. I probably should have thought it out more. But I think, I don't know, I think we nailed some interesting points there for the most part. Um, yeah, get a hold of us by the email. We have dfd.slm@deployedfromdetroit.com. That's the show's line. Shoot us a comment there. Like I said, we're not really paying attention to the Facebook and all that as much as we ought to. So if you're trying to get a hold of us there, definitely try email first. Or maybe even try and hit us up on YouTube here, because there's ways to do that. We love you, gang. We know it's rough out there, but it only gets better when you start making it better. That's how this shit works. If we're sitting there going, oh, that sucks, then yeah, it's going to suck. That's how that goes. But the minute we start building, that's how you end up with Camelot. So if that's something you want, I suggest you start fucking building Camelot. So get after it, gang. Love ya. Bye. Where's my buttons? How do I stop doing things? Bye. I think.